What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week. We got, news about new Camaro stuff. We have an Integra Type S. There's also some future Toyota and Lexus stuff coming down the line we'll be talking about here that's pretty exciting for enthusiasts. And so lots of good stuff to cover here in this weekly update. But first off, getting into the Camaro news here. So Car and Driver put out an exciting report here this week that finally gives us some info on what Chevy might be planning. None of this stuff is official or confirmed, but it's Car and Driver, and they have a pretty solid source with inside of GM. So it's, I don't want to say this is, more credible than other rumors. This is still just a rumor, but, I'm inclined to believe, what we're reading here. And so here's what they're saying. So, they just last week, I'm assuming they talked with the same source about the Corvette sub-brand. And I talked about that in last week's update about all the stuff that's coming for, the Corvette SUV and sedan and all that. So after that sub-brand rollout, supposedly they're talking about doing a Camaro sub-brand and an Escalade sub-brand. And I'll get to the Escalade one in a minute here. But getting into the Camaro one here first, here's their current plans, supposedly, or at least what they would like to do. Some of this stuff is a pretty far ways off, so we're not talking about anything in the next couple of years. It seems like we will possibly have another gap of Camaro production. I'm assuming it'll end here in 2024, like we've been hearing, or 2024 model year, and then probably a few years before this other stuff comes in. But anyway, here's what they're saying. So there's going to be a couple different versions of the Camaro, of course, for this sub-brand. The first would be a traditional Camaro body style, offered in both coupe and convertible, and but fully electric. So no hopes of anything gas living on. I mean, again, we're talking about late 2020s, where most of the new debuts for any car company are going to be electric, and so it'll be electric, but there will be a 7th generation Camaro, supposedly. So to me, that's good news, because for a while there, it seemed like they were just going to let the Camaro brand die off, and they're just letting it die on the vine. But it seems like they actually do care about the Camaro brand a little bit, so that's encouraging to hear. But then there also would be a Camaro crossover that'll be available in both 4-door and 2-door body styles. For an SUV, honestly, there's very few 2-door SUVs, like Land Rover Defender and, one or two others. So that would be kind of cool. And they say it would be sporty in its focus. I'm assuming the 2-door version would really help to differentiate from the Blazer SS EV, which is already sporty and very fast and aggressive, with its styling. So I don't know how the 4-door one would differentiate itself, considering they still are saying it's going to be a crossover. But then lastly, the other version of the Camaro they're planning is a top sports car version that uses some components from the electric C9 Corvette that's coming. But the Camaro would use a few of those components, but obviously it'd be tuned down. It wouldn't be as high performing as the Corvette, and it would have a lower price point and also different styling, of course, to differentiate it. And so that's what they're planning here, and I'm a little surprised that there is no 4-door sedan version of the Camaro. That would make more sense than the crossover, especially considering, again, they have the Blazer, which, again, is going to be fast, and they're marketing that as a sporty thing as well. I feel like there's going to be too much overlap there. I get the Camaro thing. They want to be like, I'm sure, the Mustang Mach-E and do their own thing, and that makes sense, to chase the Mach-E, but, I don't know where that leaves the Blazer. It's just kind of a strange overlap, in my opinion. I feel like a Camaro sedan would be great, but maybe they'll, like I mentioned last week, maybe there will be some type of 4-door electric Chevy sedan that they could call Chevelle or something else, and maybe they'll do a different name than the Camaro, and that's why Camaro isn't, going to get a 4-door sedan version. But anyway, that's what we're hearing as far as that. Again, I'm just thankful they're using the Camaro name and using it on something with 2 doors and an actual kind of pony car style, even if, again, it's electric. It's just great to see it live on. Just like, by the time this comes out, probably 2028 or something like that, there's probably going to be an electric Mustang replacing the gas one, and you'll have an electric 2-door. That Ford's been, there's been rumors about that happening. This will be a short-lived, 7th gen of the Mustang as well, and then by late 2020s, that'll be replaced with an electric one too. So I'm not surprised by the electric thing. It is what it is, but I'm just glad to see Camaro may actually stick around, because, competition is always, the driver of progress in a lot of ways. And so as we get into the electric stuff, you'll have an electric Mustang, electric Camaro, and the Charger EV, and kind of reignite that competition once again, and I think that'll be great. So anyway, interesting to hear that about the Camaro. Now, moving on to the Escalade sub-brand here. That's coming also again after the Corvette trio. And so for these additional Escalade models, they're planning one that's a smaller 7-seat crossover, which I'm assuming will either take the place of the XT6 or kind of maybe bridge a gap between the XT6 and the Escalade, and maybe something in the middle there. The two other ideas that they say they're kicking around, supposedly, again, according to this source from Car and Driver within GM, is they're kicking around a more all-terrain Escalade that's more car-like, as well as a luxury minivan version for China, where luxury minivans are popular. And so that's an interesting idea as well. I'm kind of surprised they haven't done an all-terrain version of the Escalade just for the normal gas version already. You know, maybe that's something that's just going to be a variant of the normal Escalade, so that wouldn't really be, you know, needed for a sub-brand. But anyway, you know, all sounds promising there. But it's interesting because, you know, for one, again, these plans seem to be pretty distant and far off. Nothing's been decided or set in stone, it doesn't seem. So, you know, this stuff could change. None of this might ever come to fruition. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But it is funny, though, because one commenter actually pointed out in the Car and Driver comments on their site that it really does seem like it's GM trying to go back to, like, bring back, like, Oldsmobile without bringing back Oldsmobile, having a brand underneath Cadillac, you know, that's something a little bit different, kind of have a sub-brand, and then having a performance brand above regular Chevys, kind of like Pontiac. So it'd be cool if they brought those brands back, but I know both brands kind of have some challenging stuff, you know, from a branding standpoint these days, and, you know, just probably wouldn't make sense, so they do Camaro and Escalade sub-brands instead. But it's like, you know, GM just loves having all these different sub-brands, and, you know, hopefully they don't spread themselves too thin, but I mean, it all sounds very intriguing, and we'll see what happens with all of that. For some official news about some future product here, Acura has confirmed the Integra Type S, and they say it's going to be coming for the 2024 model year. It'll be coming next summer. They even gave us a few details here on it and a very clear look at the car, as you can see. So it gets some more aggressive styling, but only a subtle lip spoiler instead of a rear wing there, essentially giving it the vibe of like a, you know, Civic Type R, you know, touring kind of model. It also seems like a Type R touring with a theme for the car's components and setup. So they say it'll get a high revving 2-liter VTEC turbo engine with over 300 horsepower and paired exclusively with a 6-speed manual and limited slip diff. So, you know, fully expect the Type R powertrain to carry over here. It's going to be copy and pasting, I'm pretty sure, and that's okay. Again, I've said this so many times since the Integra was announced and debuted. Everyone was expecting more than what they should be expecting. An Integra has always been a nicer Civic, so therefore an Integra Type S will always just be a nicer Civic Type R. And that's exactly what it's going to be here. I know some people would like to see all-wheel drive or an automatic to help give it some more differentiation, but there's nothing in the parts bin, I think, they can really use as far as, you know, I mean, they could potentially do the 10-speed auto, but I don't know if it would be, you know, if it would make sense to upgrade it for the extra power. I don't believe there's an all-wheel drive system that could handle, you know, that much power that they, you know, without, I don't know if you can just swap in an Acura all-wheel drive system, you know, in a vehicle that doesn't have, you know, that super handling all-wheel drive already in its, you know, platform. I don't know. I don't think it's technically feasible. And also, again, I don't think that's something that anyone should expect, because there's never been an Integra with all-wheel drive before. There's never been, you know, any kind of performance version of the Integra with an automatic, you know. So I think this historically lines up. And, you know, I just think it's going to always just be a nicer Civic. And so, you know, with this, it's you know, the same kind of thing. And I think they're kind of leaning into that here. And that's, you know, totally what they're going for, because they say that one differentiation, you know, according to Acura, they're saying that this is going to be, the Integra Type S is going to promise ultimate street performance and driver engagement. So as opposed to the Type R, where you have, you know, pretty much a track-focused vehicle, you know, it's just everything's optimized for the track. It's really stiff in the R mode and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think with this, they're going to try and optimize street performance, so it'll be more comfortable, more luxurious. It's going to be heavier as a result, but again, people that aren't chasing lap times don't care about that. So for a street-focused thing like the Type S here, that'll be great. You know, loaded up with the heated seats, loaded up with, you know, moonroof, and you know, probably the ELS stereo system with more speakers and, you know, all kinds of other luxuries potentially. And, you know, have it be, you know, more comfortable and more mature and grown up. I mean, the new Type R has definitely gotten more mature with its looks. But again, even still, a lot of people don't want to drive around with a massive rear wing on the back of their daily driver. You know, I mean, there's, you know, some people that are fine with that, but other people don't want that, but they still want the fun of the Type R. And so you have all of the Type R fun, a little more comfort, and you don't have the huge rear wing that sticks out. And so I think there's definitely a market there, for that. And so I'm really excited personally. I've always wanted them to bring a Civic Type R touring like Canada got, and I think a few other markets, with no rear wing. And obviously you can do a wing delete or something, but it's really nice to, just have the nicer Acura here, for those who can afford it. There's obviously no pricing given here yet because we're still way early. But, if you look at, the typical price premium for an Integra over a Civic Si right now, we're talking, what, $6 or $7 grand over. So expect this to come in either just under 50 grand or just barely over 50 grand would be my guess. I could be wrong. But, don't be upset if you see this thing have a 50 grand price tag. It totally would line up with the kind of premium that Acura expects pricing wise, whenever you go from the Civic to the Integra. So, and obviously dealer markups and all that kind of stuff. But as far as, MSRPs go, I think that's kind of, where you can expect it to land. But anyway, I'm excited for it, and let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And we have a bunch of really interesting reports here about future stuff that Toyota's working on, thanks to a European forum that Toyota held this past week. And so Autocar has a bunch of interesting reports here on all the things that were discussed and revealed. So first, let's cover what they said about the Lexus LFA successor that's coming. So it'll be electric. It's going to be arriving by 2030, so way far out. But it'll be based on the GT3 race car that they're working on. But even crazier is that they're planning to give it a real manual transmission, complete with a clutch and all that stuff. They already have a proof of concept prototype in a European Lexus UX 300E, which is they have an electric version of the UX in Europe, and they hooked up to a manual, and they say that the manual is an integral part of an enthusiast-focused drivetrain, and that a manual EV might not just be for a LFA successor, but also could be something that finds its way into other models. But I do have to say, just as an aside, that it's kind of interesting to hear Lexus say that, a manual is really important to a good enthusiast vehicle when none of the Lexus F models have ever offered a manual. And, people were begging for it for over a decade and never got it. And now all of a sudden Lexus thinks that a manual is important. I'm glad about it. They can join the bandwagon of, the slowly growing, group of people that are, trying to save the manual here. But it's just kind of funny. Like, I would have loved to see a manual ISF or any of the sweet models they put out in the past, 10 years. I'd love to see anyone with a manual. But anyway, moving on from that, back to this prototype here. It has a clutch, and it can actually be stalled too, they pointed out. So, this isn't just some like little joystick that you're playing and it's not connected to anything. Like, it's actually connected. I believe they said it's actually clutch by wire and everything, brake by wire. It's going to be all digitized as far as that stuff goes. But it is going to be, something where you can screw it up if you want to. And so, it should give you that real engagement. They also have it paired up with real engine noises, which sounded pretty convincing too. There's a little video that Evo uploaded to Twitter, and Evo magazine posted, and it's pretty interesting with the sound. It almost sounds like it's just a normal gas-powered vehicle. It's pretty impressive with how convincing it is, honestly. So anyway, that's all we know about that, but at least we do know they're working hard on an actual manual electric vehicle, which I think is really cool. I hope others follow suit. And, obviously it's just, again, about the engagement. It'll be slower in every way than a non-manual version, but it's going to be fun and cool and keep that alive. Even if it's not, through a gas engine, it'll still keep that engagement alive. And so I'm excited for that. We'll see if it makes its way into the actual production version or not. This whole thing is 7 years away. So it's going to be a long time before we see, what ends up happening with that. But it's exciting to see them trying something different, though. So cool to hear that. They also discussed the GR sub-brand. And so their European head of products said, and again, Autocar's reporting here as well, that clearly for GR, the strategy is very clear. We want to continue our journey, and we are looking at several options, according to, again, their head of products in Europe. So he explained that the reception of the GR models has been so good that there's no reason to change that direction as far as ending the gas-powered cars. Not sure how they plan to get around, the regulations coming down the road, but they're just, maybe they're not worried about Europe, I don't know, but they're saying, hey, we'll keep doing the gas stuff, people love it, and, it's all been received very well. But they said they will have to transition to electrified stuff eventually, but he reiterated Toyota's position that, Toyota firmly believes they want to have multiple, power sources for their vehicles, for, whatever people need and want. And, so that's why they're investing in hydrogen, they're investing in the electric stuff, hybrids, plug-in hybrids. and all that. And so, he says that they're, kind of keeping their options open, but it's just good to know they do plan on doing future GR models, because, some people, even myself, were kind of wondering, well, maybe this is like the final hurrah, and it's just like, they got the crazy GR Corolla, we got the Supra, we got the GR86, like we're in the heyday of, the golden years here of Toyota performance, and then, all this stuff will go away when everything goes electric. But it sounds like they're going to try and keep it alive with, engines, and even possibly with, electrified stuff as well. And again, even like with that LFA successor, having a manual to give you more engagement there. So cool to see that there are so many enthusiasts within Toyota here. I mean, obviously Akio Toyota is, a huge enthusiast and race car driver himself. So I think, with a company being led by this kind of a team, they have the enthusiast best interest at heart, I think. And so hopefully they will, keep carrying that torch for a long time to come. And so, but just great to hear that, all this stuff we're seeing from Toyota is not just going to die off. The GR brand will continue, and hopefully continue with lots of great stuff in the future. But speaking about the hydrogen stuff and hydrogen GR models potentially, at the European Forum again, Toyota engineers showed off the Corolla Cross H2 concept, which might not look too exciting on the outside, but this is actually running a version of the GR Corolla's 1.6-liter turbo 3-cylinder and a manual transmission in this thing. And so in this, it burns hydrogen, just like in the Corolla race car they were testing in the Super Taikoo Endurance Series races this year. And so I talked about that a while back. And in that car, the hydrogen tank was so big that it took up like the entire back seat, and just wasn't very efficient as far as how much hydrogen you need to have on board to actually complete these races and stuff. And so in this new Corolla Cross here, the pack is positioned under the car, similar to like where it's at in a Mirai, so that it now has a usable back seat and cargo area. So making good progress, towards, something more production ready. And they said that thanks to the race series, the GR engineers were able to improve power and efficiency by between 24 and 33%, depending on the metric and, what you're talking about, along with dropping the refill time from 5 minutes to just 90 seconds now to refill a full tank of hydrogen. So, I mean, at that point, you're faster than a gas-powered vehicle, and again, your only emission is water, and it's great. For these reasons, I guess we're able to go with a smaller hydrogen tank. They didn't detail how much range this has with the smaller tank under the vehicle instead of taking up an entire back seat. But, I mean, those are big efficiency improvements of like 33%. So, I mean, that'll certainly help the range. It still might not be great, though. I don't know, I'd love to know what the range is for this thing. But Toyota says that it's about 40% of the way to having a sellable product with this development project here. And they don't even know if they could bring it to market. But it's very promising. If Toyota can actually make real advancements in, this type of stuff, especially if it's hydrogen burning, then you don't even have to worry about any kind of battery whatsoever. And so it really would be the perfect solution with just the two enormous hurdles of, can we make, the hydrogen production cost effective enough that it's, reasonable to, fill it up and, even close to being the same price as a fill up for a gas tank. And then also, where are you going to put the infrastructure? I mean, people complain about the electric infrastructure with, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of charging stations at this point, and people still don't think that's enough. So, with hydrogen, we're in the, embryonic stage basically here. So, it's going to take a long time, even if Toyota does figure this out, it'll be a shame because, you'll be able to drive it around California and Japan maybe, and that's about it. So I hope that, maybe if Toyota has a real solid proof of concept here, this really spurs, some action towards the hydrogen thing, and we have something that, is potentially a good, viable alternative, for those who, don't want the electric thing, or just, maybe this could be even better. We'll have to wait and see. So anyway, very exciting, with this advancement, in my opinion, and so those Toyota engineers, they're doing all kinds of great stuff. So awesome to see that. They also, last little thing here at the little European forum here, they also revealed the CHR Prologue concept of the next generation of the CHR that's coming, but only for Europe. So a Toyota spokesperson actually confirmed to Motor Trend when Motor Trend reached out about this. The North American CHR is actually done after the 2022 model year. So, I mean, we're like 3 weeks away from the end of 2022. So basically, North American CHR production is probably already done or, wrapping up. And we won't get anything new. So if you're wanting to get a CHR in the last minute, grab them while you can. But, Toyota pointed out that the Corolla Cross is kind of, the vehicle that was engineered for American buyers in mind and Canadian buyers, because this is also going away from Canada too. So North American buyers, the Corolla Cross suits what they want better in Toyota's opinion. And so they don't think the CHR is going to be really missed too much. So that's, an interesting development there. But, moving on to, this actual concept though, for those who are here in Europe or just are curious in general, I'll briefly say that, I think it looks a lot like the BZ concept SUV that we saw, just last month in LA, but it does have some differences here. It looks a little smaller while still looking, really good. And Toyota says it'll have more interior room than the old one, and they even provided the powertrain details here. So it's going to get 3 different powertrains. There's going to be 2 hybrids and a plug-in hybrid. The base engine is based on the 1.8 liter 4-cylinder, does 122 horsepower, even with the hybrid assistance. There's another setup that uses the 2-liter 4-cylinder, does 184 horsepower. I believe that's basically like what you do with the Prius motor, the new brand new Prius here. And then there's also going to be a plug-in hybrid one that uses the new Prius Prime's, punchier setup there. And so that'll be an interesting one, I'm sure, because then that will probably put, the CHR over 200 horsepower and could actually be a legitimate, sporty version. And so interesting to hear that for those of you in Europe. And, we'll see if maybe we get a sportier Corolla Cross someday or something, but I wouldn't hold my breath. But for those of you in Europe, it seems like a very cool development. And it should be coming, I'm assuming, sometime here in the next year or so. And we have one more Toyota story to cover here, and this one actually does pertain to the U.S. So Motor Trend asked Toyota's Executive Vice President of North American Sales about whether there's any hope of the Land Cruiser returning to the United States. And he replied, "Will we ever? I would say likely yes." And he added, "Have I seen designs, thoughts, and hopes? Yes, but nothing to announce. It's still a ways off." So clearly they're not talking about the current generation, new Land Cruiser that came out last year. That would have made sense to bring over. They would have brought it over already, last year along with the LX. But, they couldn't justify it. And I totally get the point. I mean, it was, very, very close in price to the LX, which is much nicer. And so for American buyers, it just made no sense to go for the Land Cruiser most of the time. And so, as far as whether he's talking about a next generation Land Cruiser or if he's talking about the Land Cruiser becoming something different for the North American market, which is kind of what I think they're talking about. There was the little FJ Cruiser kind of concept that came out not too long ago. It could be something like that if they're trying to compete with Bronco or something like that. I think there's a possibility something like that is, maybe something they're kicking around at Toyota, or, it could be any number of things. But basically, if you want the current Land Cruiser, just go buy an LX, because it sounds like, you're not going to ever get that version here, but, they could use the name for something else down the road. Whether or not that makes Land Cruiser fans excited, I don't know. But anyway, interesting to hear that little nugget of info. Mercedes-AMG this week has revealed the S63 E Performance. And so the powertrain is similar to the AMG GT 63 S E Performance, running a twin-turbo 4-liter V8 that does 603 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque on its own, along with also running a 9-speed automatic and all-wheel drive. And while it has a similar electric motor in the rear like the GT, in this it does more power, with 188 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque on its own, along with its own 2-speed transmission. It sounds like a nightmare from an engineering standpoint, but anyway, altogether, it combines to do 791 horsepower and 1,055 pound-feet of torque, which is crazy. Out of a production Mercedes, over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. It also will do a 3.2 seconds 0 to 60, which is also equally crazy and something that's massive and luxurious like the S-Class, and to be doing supercar acceleration is nuts. Part of that extra power is also thanks to a larger battery here in the S-Class, so that should give it more range than the measly little 7 miles or so that the GT is rated at. And so the battery is almost double the size, but still only 13.1 kilowatt hours, so don't expect more than 20 miles of range. Still pretty low for a plug-in hybrid, but obviously this thing is focused on performance, not, much electric range, but, nice, it gets a little bit more, I guess. It also gets larger brakes to slow all this extra performance and weight down, running 15.7-inch rotors and 6-piston calipers in the front and 15-inch rotors in the rear. Carbon ceramic brakes are optional as well. Other improvements here for the new S63 are new braces to stiffen up the chassis, along with unique tuning for the active air suspension and active anti-roll bars. There's also active engine mounts for the first time on the S-Class. And then they all come with 4-wheel steering as well, which will certainly help with the handling. And the styling gets the usual AMG enhancements on the outside and on the inside as well. Alfa Romeo has teased a new Giulia SWB Zagato that they'll be debuting next year. And so there's no official info given on this. It was just posted on their social media basically, and so all we see is this very long LED taillight design here. But this past summer, Alfa's CEO did tell Autocar that a two-door flagship concept would be debuting in the first half of 2023, and that it will be a very exciting, very selective, and very expensive vehicle. So don't expect, any kind of regular production two-door Giulia. This is going to be some type of coach-built, very rare thing that'll go for, crazy amounts of money and never actually get driven probably. And so based on the interview, at that time they said it could either be fully electric or fully gas, so it'll be one or the other. But if it's based on the Giulia, I feel like it would be easier, unless this is going to debut like a new Giulia. I think otherwise this is going to just be, a quadrifoglio that's hacked up to, give it the coach built body and a few other changes. But I'm guessing it'll just be, fully gas, and that would be the easier way to do it for sure. But yeah, it's just a shame it's going to be rare and expensive. But anyway, always cool to see a new sports car nonetheless. So cool to hear that. And some other Alfa news here, though. Their North American Vice President of Marketing and Product talked to journalists this week about their electrification plans. And he confirmed that for America, at least, the Tonale is the last gas-powered vehicle that they'll be introducing. And from 2025 and beyond, they'll only debut electric stuff going forward. So they're doing this switch really fast. They will sell the gas stuff alongside, the current generation gas stuff alongside, but after, from 2025 on, there's never going to be a new gas powered Alfa debut supposedly. So when the electric transition does start to happen, it'll come quickly. They are saying that there's going to be they're promising new models, could be even more than one, new models every year from 2025 through 2030. So that's going to really expand the Alfa lineup as well, because you're going to have, you got Giulia, Stelvio, or whatever they end up doing with those, sized vehicles, and then the Tonale, and then you got, room for a couple more there as well. So hopefully that'll help Alfa dealers, even though it is a long ways off. They'll at least have some more product to sell and some fresher stuff here in a few years. And so interesting to hear that. And some other electric Stellantis news. Ram has put out a new teaser video here for the electric Ram Revolution before its debut in January at CES. And so for the first time here, we see an actual physical truck instead of the usual sketches that we're used to seeing. And it looks like it's going to be retaining the daytime LED lights there that we saw on the sketches earlier this year, and the big Ram logo in the middle, along with camera side mirrors, which is a new revelation, and a few body shots here you can see in clay. So it just gives you a hint at what they're looking at as far as the lines for the body and stuff, which is cool. And so we have less than a month to go for the reveal here, and I think they said it's like the first week in January, and it'll likely be the first big vehicle debut here of 2023. So very interesting to get that teaser, and we'll have to see what they end up doing with that new Ram. Polestar has revealed an over-the-air power upgrade that's available to Polestar 2 owners that want to pay for it. So it bumps the power from 408 horsepower to 476 horsepower, and from 487 pound-feet of torque to 502 pound-feet of torque. So it lowers the 0 to 60 time to 4.2 seconds now, and it also includes a new performance application in the infotainment system to show off your 0 to 60 runs, as well as it shows you a G meter and a couple other things. And so this upgrade is going to cost $1,195 and can be installed at home with just a simple download. And so we'll see how popular that is, but I think it's cool that Polestar is offering it. And I mean, that's a pretty big horsepower bump. You're going up, almost 70 horsepower for $1,200. Not a bad deal, So, I mean, I think that's, pretty cool. Obviously, there's the whole, complaint of like, well, if the car is capable of it, why not just get it from the beginning and they're charging you more for it later? But, I mean, clearly Polestar owners are happy with the current power level, or else they wouldn't have bought it. And so this is just hopefully sweetening the deal. And for $1,200, I think it's a very reasonable deal as well. So cool to see that. And that might not be the only power bump for the Polestar 2, because Volvo just announced some revised powertrains for the C40 and the XC40 for Europe, and the chances are that the US versions will also get this same stuff next year, along with the Polestar 2. That's not confirmed, but they share components and they're under the same, parent company, so I would assume it'll get it. We'll have to see. But anyway, one of the biggest changes for Europe is that their front-wheel drive version, which we don't get here in the States, but the front-wheel drive versions of the Volvos, they have now been dropped, and they've been replaced by rear-wheel drive versions for better efficiency. So if you're getting two-wheel drive in your Volvo now, it's rear-wheel drive, which is a big change. And so it's supposedly it made it more efficient to go rear-wheel drive instead of front. So that base model gets an extra 7 horsepower, along with 26 more miles of range from the same battery as before. The all-wheel drive version gets nice improvements too. And so since we do get the all-wheel drive versions of the C40 and XC40 in the States, these are the improvements I think we'll be getting. So first, the battery grows from 78 kilowatt hours to an 82 kilowatt hour pack, and that's combined with more efficient motors once again. And so because of it, the XC40 will now do 311 miles on the easier WLTP test in Europe. So I think they're rated at like 228 miles of range here, I think, in the States. So with a bigger battery, I'm guessing we'll be over 250. It could be more than that, we'll have to see. But anyway, in Europe there, it's an improvement of 42 miles of range. And the C40 gains 37 miles of range for 315 miles total for that one. And the packs also make a big leap in charge speed, which I'm impressed with, going from 150 kilowatt charging to now 200 kilowatt, which I'm hoping they upgraded the components, because that's a 25% power increase basically that you're pushing through this thing. And so anyway, it cuts the recharge time for the 10% to 80% charge by 10 minutes. So now doing that charge in just 27 minutes. So pretty impressive improvements here. The motor setup is also now rear biased. So even though it still does the same 402 horsepower for these all-wheel drive versions, the motors aren't the same on each axle anymore. It used to be, it was like 201 horsepower on each end and, very, evenly split. But now the front one does 161 horsepower and the rear one does 241 horsepower. So, definitely gives you, it's not a crazy rear bias, but it is, rear bias, which is cool. And so Volvo won't say anything about the US versions still, but I can't see any reason why they wouldn't give the US versions the same stuff. So anyway, great improvements there. And lastly, Fisker has teased their new car coming after the Ocean, called the Pear, which stands for Personal Electric Automotive Revolution. And so we get a pretty good look at it here from the one shot, and Fisker says to him it looks like a futuristic little space shuttle, which is an interesting way to describe it, but it'll most likely be considered a crossover, and it'll be on a steel platform to keep the price down, with Fisker aiming for a starting price of under $30,000. The Ocean is on an aluminum platform, so this will be a little bit cheaper and maybe a little bit heavier, at least as far as the platform goes, but that'll help to keep it cheap. But he also says it will have a lot of unique features that have never been done before. And we saw from patent images earlier this year that there's going to be some unique stuff as far as like the tailgate, I guess, slides down behind the rear bumper whenever you're in tight spaces and stuff. So that'll be handy. And I think they said there's going to be some unique interior storage solutions and things like that as well. So we'll have to see about all that. But it'll begin production in the second half of 2024 at the new Foxconn assembly plant in Ohio that used to build Chevy Cruzes, Cobalts, and Cavaliers. And so it'll be interesting to see. They have big plans. They're saying, I think they want to initially do 250,000 of these things a year they want to build, which is really optimistic already. And then I think they eventually someday want to get like 1 million units a year and stuff. I don't know. I'm still not totally sold on Fisker. I know they have some better financial backing and stuff now, but I'll believe some of this stuff when I see it. The Ocean, by the way, has started to roll off the production line. So we'll see, how well that goes and, go from there. But at least good to see that has actually come to fruition and will start to be delivered into customer hands here very, very soon. So anyway, but interesting to hear that. We'll continue to follow that stuff. And lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you who are members of the Matt Maran Motoring Club. So we didn't have any new members join this week, but I did want to give a shout out to member Jorge, who's been a member now for 8 months. So I really appreciate the support, Jorge. I hope you're enjoying all the perks. And again, I just really thank you for being a member here. And for anyone else that would like to become a member, there's always going to be a join button here on the video page, on the channel page, and also a link in the description as well. But anyway, that's it as far as all the news this week, guys. If you like this weekly update, please give it a like and leave a comment and make sure you're subscribed as well. All that stuff helps to keep these videos coming. And anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.